Hello and welcome back to the AL Central Therapy Session. I am Eric, and with me today,
I'm Dan.
And I'm Sam.
it has been a real bleak week of baseball for two of us. Cleveland doesn't look, it looks like they're kind of on the upswing, but
Mm.
Minnesota and Kansas City have not played that well, despite the Twins going 5-5. But I'll get into that in a second. But briefly, I just wanted to go over what the standings are. And right now, Detroit still has gone 6-4 of their last 10. They're now leading leading the division by 8 games. Minnesota, the next team back, is 5-5, but has had a brutal week with pitching. Cleveland, half game behind the Twins. Kansas City now dipped below 500 for the first time, I believe, in 6 weeks. And Chicago is actually playing all right, but in spite of Kansas City, or because of Kansas City. Well, not because, but you get what I'm saying. They played them. It didn't go well for Kansas City. So how are you guys feeling over this last week? Or am I just a Debbie Downer?
Um, I, I think my feelings are that it's it's pretty tough because there were not such high expectations, but there were some expectations coming into the season. And I think for most Royals fans, there have been very few times in their lives when the Royals have come into a season with expectations. And pretty much the last time that was the case, the Royals won the World Series.
Mm,
And so I think it's difficult to kind of, a team that loses a lot of games is one thing, but kind of being let down is another thing. And granted, there's a lot of season left. I'm not going to say that
yeah,
it's over, but I think the way that the Royals have been playing recently, it feels like it's going to start getting late early.
right. And we're a third of the way through the season already, so it's not even that
Yeah,
early anymore.
yeah. And I think the other thing is that the kind of excuses that were around the team for a little while up to this point are kind of gone for the most part
Right.
because MJ Melendez is gone, Hunter Renfro's gone, Cagliano's been called up, all these things, and it's not that early anymore. So it's starting to get into some squeaky bum time, as they might say in soccer.
I have never heard that before. What is this?
You you've never heard of squeaky bum time?
No. Should I have?
Uh, I mean, it's something they say in soccer. Dan, are you with me?
I'm sorry, I'm not a communist, so I don't know anything about soccer.
Okay, okay.
Explain
Well,
That's
to
it.
Reggie.
Before we get hate mail, that's a joke, by the way. But no, I'm not familiar with this terminology.
oh, okay, okay. Squeaky bum time just basically means it's time to be clutch.
I don't get it, but I don't think I need to either.
Okay. Anyway, moving on. Uh,
I
they just
barely know
got done.
baseball. Don't trick me with another sport.
They just got done playing the Yankees, so that didn't go well. And we can talk a little bit more about Caglione in a minute here. But I think the way things are right now, it's kind of it's getting into time where they need to win some games. So,
Yeah.
but we'll see.
Dan, how's Cleveland feeling?
My feelings are more tempered. It's been a very rough start of June here. 3-6 in the month. This team remains inconsistent, and that's just what it is. They'll play better for a little while, and you get your hopes up, and things are looking good, and then they have the kind of week and a half that they've had, where at one point going into Wednesday's game, they were averaging less than 2.5 runs per game in their last 8 games.
Mm-hmm.
And for the beginning of the season, this was a matter of, oh, is the starting pitching going to come around in a way that they can keep themselves in ball games to get it to the bullpen. And starting pitch has been better. Tanner Bybee has been very good lately. Luis Ortiz has pitched admirably of late. Slade Ciccone coming up has been a nice addition. That's kind of worked itself up, and now all of a sudden it's like you fill one hole and another one pops up somewhere else. The offense slowed down significantly. And I think the tough part of that is, every team's going to go through I talk about it on here, losing 5 out of 6 and kind of how you feel about coming to the ballpark. But every team's going to lose 5 out of 6 at some point. The Guardians just did. But as a fan, when you lose 5 out of 6 and it's so hard to scratch runs across the plate, Sam, no offense, but you know what that's like this year. It's just brutal to watch, and as a fan, it kind of lets the wind out of your sails. So it's been a rough week and a half or so, but at the same time, I just kind of feel like it's been a rough week and a half or so. And I think I can feel that way because everything I just said rings true. Less than 2.5 runs per game. And then they came out on Wednesday and scored 11 on Cincinnati right before heading out west to Seattle. So, a good way to kind of close out a homestand that you would hope to want better. But at least they had that good game before getting on the plane. And they start up in about an hour and a half. We'll see what's next. And that's kind of where I'm at, is we'll see what's next at this point, just with how inconsistent they've been.
Right. I mean, the Twins, I might be being dramatic because they're 5-5 over the last 10, even though they're down 2-0 to the Astros in the first right now. Chris Paddock might be is Chris Paddock, but we'll talk about it more in depth. But the Twins are 2-5 in their last 7, and they have been outscored 30-62 in their last 7 games. They've given up 62 runs. Yay. And
To
the
who?
pitching staff.
To who exactly?
The Rangers twice, and then the Athletics. They actually won that series, but then they got pretty much torched by the Rangers. They they won a game out of that series, but don't look at the run differential. It's not great, but we'll start with the news.
One more thing I wanted to mention, I forgot. Sorry. To have Detroit, like you said, just ripping off 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10 over and over again. Man, that doesn't help psychologically either.
No, it
To
doesn't.
be eight or 8.5 out in July and June while still being in like second or third place or whatever.
Yep.
That
Well, even
feels
like
daunting.
the Twins are still in a wild card spot, and like
Yeah.
I think Kansas City or Cleveland is like a game behind that. The American League in general, it's just a bunch of mediocre teams, and then like the Athletics and the White Sox at the bottom, and you have the Yankees and Tigers at top. There's your parity. 2 really crappy teams, 2 really good teams, and everyone else is meh. And it's just who has the best last 10 games is how you're going to feel about it. And it just, I'll go into the news in a bit. We'll talk about the Guardians first, but the Twins just had 2 pretty big blows in their starting rotation. So it's not a coincidence that they've been outscored. That they put up 62 runs, getting scored against 62 runs in their last seven games. But Dan, why don't you talk about Cleveland and what they've been doing?
It doesn't help that the news hasn't been very positive either. It's just injuries again. Like I feel like 2 weeks ago when I was kind of just ripping off thing after thing. But first, and I believe this has come to pass because I saw he got demoted today, but the Guardians had promoted last week Dom Nunez, who hadn't played in the majors for a couple of years. He's a backup catcher, strong receiver kind of catcher. He had been brought up because Austin Hedges was on the concussion IL. Like I said, Nunez was demoted today. I believe I didn't see a corresponding move with Hedges, but I might have just missed it. I can't imagine they're just running with one catcher right now. So I know for a fact that did happen. On a deeper move, though, at the end of last week, Shane Bieber, who I spoke very optimistically about last time we were on, because he had thrown 50 pitches in the complex league. He was supposed to pitch last Friday, a week from today, and he was shut down instead. Yeah, he was more sore than expected, I believe was the terminology that was used. So it's not like something was broken or ruptured, but progress isn't always linear. He was shut down for a week, and so we'll see when he picks up a baseball again. Hopefully it's soon, but that does kind of put a little bit of take some of the shine off of the potential of him coming back in 30 days and everything I was talking about last time we got together.
I'll say,
On a positive,
do you know what his pitch count was in the complex league? Like, had he
I
built up to
believe
40 pitches yet?
I believe it was like 50 pitches
Okay,
because they were trying to ramp him up to go, and he had been throwing for a while, but that was the first time he threw against competition.
right.
And if I'm not mistaken, it was about 50 pitches. Um, other moves to mention here. I've spoken at length about John Kenzie Noel on here as well. Big Christmas. He was sent to AAA. He just wasn't getting the at bats he needed in the majors. And when he was getting them, it wasn't. He was struggling big time. Occasionally would hit the ball really hard as he's apt to do, but a lot of them were getting hit at infielders. He wasn't lifting the ball. And other things that make him good. So he was demoted, and I think the timing was interesting because the idea initially was he was going to be the lefties, the left-handed pitching side of a platoon. They
Yep.
demoted him right in a span of time where they were facing like four lefties in a row, and
Oh,
so I think, yeah, you could look at it that way. I think the option there was Noel isn't hitting right now. Now that we actually have this opportunity, let's bring somebody up who maybe just fresh start, swinging it a little bit better, and he can go get his at bats against everybody at AAA.
mhm.
I know it doesn't look good, but that would be the way I'd kind of think about it. I don't think they've given up on him by any means, but I think
Right.
that was a decision that was made purposefully. Um,
Now, do you think Noel is going to be one of those guys who maybe has a nice little cup of coffee one year and then is never the same, or what would you say your outlook on Noel would be?
I think it's starting to look that way. Um, I would say he's a boomer bust prospect. There's an opportunity there for him to have a nice career and hit 40 home runs a year. But left to my own devices, I think it's more likely that he strikes out too much and he doesn't walk enough, and his plate discipline isn't very good. And yes, he can hit the ball a mile, but he's got to hit it first.
Right.
Um, yeah, objectively speaking, I don't think I don't think he makes it long term. Um,
I mean,
maybe that's
and
just
not
the mood we're all in. But yeah,
not for nothing too. He is only 23 too, so like, I don't know if he's ever been like a
they
big prospect for them, but that's still kind of young for the majors. Like rookies
well, the
typically
one
maybe
thing I'll say is, the stereotype about the Guardians, which is right, is that they don't have much power in the lineup. I mean,
Mhm.
he's going to get more chances just because of that profile. Um, and there's, I think, a little bit more hope that he will come around because of his profile compared to the rest of the team. But you can't that isn't going to
Mhm.
automatically make him work. So ultimately, I think we'll see him again, but I'm not sold that he's a long term solution, which is a shame because he's a great story. He's a good athlete, surprisingly good athlete for
Mhm.
his size, but um, might just be too much swing and miss.
This this might be a bit of a side tangent, but why can Cleveland develop star players and no in between? Why are there no like role players? It's always like
Yeah,
replacement level or all multiple time all star.
it's honestly a really good question, and I hadn't really thought about it that way before. One of the things we're going to potentially talk about later is kind of people's hot takes on the internet kind of thing. But I think the big narrative that's been going around here with this struggling offense this past week is, oh, this team doesn't know how to develop hitting. Which there are definitely counter examples to that. I mean, little 5'9" Jose Ramirez hitting 30 bombs a year is a counter example to that. Um, Quan is a counter example to that. Even if you want to like pull somebody out like Lindor, but regardless of all that, um, I don't know if you'd call Quan a star. I think he's close.
I think he's
Um,
there. I don't see why he
yeah,
wouldn't be.
Yeah.
yeah. Thank you. Sometimes I get concerned being biased, but glad to hear that. But you're right. Beyond that, everybody's for the most part, the hope is somebody else can get a WRC plus of 100. a lot of
Yeah.
times. And so there's no in between. Why is that? The profile of the ball player the Guardians seek out in position players is interesting. It tends to be athletic, middle of the infield guys, which isn't necessarily odd, but it tends to be athletic, middle of the infield guys with good bat to ball skills. All three of those guys I mentioned are that. But the premise is they feel like if a ball player has good bat to ball skills and has a good eye at the plate, they can teach him to lift and pull the ball. And they've done that a few times, but they've also not been very successful a bunch of times. And so that to me is kind of the big, if you want to have a criticism about the player development side of things, it's do they do this often enough? And it sure seems like they don't. And I think the outcome of that is when you fail in terms of developing a player, you're going to get a bunch of guys that have 90, 80 WRC plus because
Right.
that's the type of guy you're looking for, guys who catch the ball and are athletic. It can maybe hit it, but don't hit it with authority. And that's how you get all these guys that kind of have been what they've been.
Right. And that doesn't go for pitching, by the way, because we've all talked about how Cleveland are
Yeah.
ridiculously
Yes.
good at developing. It's just purely hitters. It baffles me that they can't seem to develop a corner outfield, corner infielder with power that
Yeah.
isn't a superstar.
It's because they're not. I guess it's what they're not seeking those guys. Like Noel is an odd case because he is totally
Right.
that, but he wasn't a draftee. He was a guy they signed, from the Dominican. But no, they're not even looking for that. They're looking for athletic dudes who put the bat on the ball because they feel like they can teach a shortstop how to play third or right
Right.
field or whatever, and they think they can teach him how to pull the ball and hit it in
Right.
the air. And they have a couple times, but a lot of times they haven't. And sometimes I just wonder if that's just really how talented that ball player is, and it's not on them, maybe. But I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, not for like that's not unique to the Guardians. Like everyone drafts shortstops and like
Yeah,
shortstops and center fielders are all over the draft, and then you move down the defensive spectrum. So like that in itself isn't. But it just
um,
we need to develop like three
but I'm
Casey
also
Blakes, and they'll be fine.
I love Casey. My dad's favorite player from that era was Casey Blake. So thank you for shouting out Casey Blake. But also I'm assuming the Twins drafted Larnick and Wallner,
Yes,
and those guys aren't that.
correct.
So they were willing to take the Guardians draft pitchers, usually college
Mhm.
pitchers, and the guys I just described,
Yeah,
and they are militant about it at this point.
but the pitchers they don't even draft in the first round. That's like
Not necessarily, yeah.
their 4 to 10. I'm because the Twins have done the same thing, and Falvey came from Cleveland, so I'm assuming this has been
Two,
an
three,
MMO.
four,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
but not usually first round. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, the Twins prototype for their draft is a college bat. If they're like just typical, they had like Royce Lewis was a first overall pick, and a couple years ago they drafted a high school pitcher, which I think they had never done before. But it's college bat round one, some type of like overperforming like shortstop with like good numbers, and then like basically draft rounds 4 through 10. It's all pitchers from no name colleges that they think they can add some velo to.
now
But
the one hope they do have in this profile is Chase DeLauder, who I haven't talked about a lot. He was their first round pick in 23, I believe. Um, and he's a left-handed hitter, has some authority to his swing. He was a first, like I said, first round pick, but he has all the other stuff. He played center field in college, big bot, but he makes contact with the ball a lot. And the issue they've had with him is keeping him on the field,
mm,
and that's why I haven't talked about him a lot. He's had foot issues throughout his young pro career. He looked really good early in the spring training this year, and then got hurt. He just came back recently, so he's not even on the 40 man at this point.
mm,
But if there's a next guy that could be the type of guy you were describing, Eric, who's not kind of the light hitting, can drive the ball a little bit more and
mm.
be either a star or kind of just a good hitter, it's him. And there's a couple other guys in there too, but he's kind of like the biggest hope, I'd say.
Not to go continue this tangent, but Sam, who do the Royals typically draft? Do you pay attention a lot to their minors a lot, or what's their
I
strength
think
developing?
I think their biggest strength is developing. Um, I know that recently they've been really focused on drafting college players,
Yep.
specifically guys who have been in school for a few years. And I think it's kind of interesting the way that like college baseball has changed image over the past decade or so, because there was a time where if you were anyone, you were getting drafted straight out of high school.
Hmm.
Like, the college baseball was seen as like, you know, very, very not a thing.
Right.
So I think it's interesting to see a lot of teams, as Dan mentioned, go more toward looking at college players who have some more experience under their belt.
Yeah.
But I think for me, really, the Royals have done a pretty good job of developing players who are, you know, speedy players who can play defense and making them somewhat replacement level hitters. I think there's been a lot of Royals players who fit that build over the years.
Hmm.
And I think one of them is a perfect example of that is Kyle Isbell. He was
Sure.
pretty much a
He's a good one.
non-prospect, but he was a speedy guy. He can play defense really well, and they turned him into someone who could, hit, be a, one WAR, 1-0 WAR type of guy. And he's been, I think, pretty good in his tenure as a Royal. So
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the mold of a lot of Royals players over the years.
Yeah. I think like with the draft, I think it helped that. Well, it didn't help, but when MLB trimmed the draft from like 50 rounds to 20 rounds, like now you're not going to
Hmm.
take as many shots because college players are
Yeah.
typically more dependable, and you
Hmm.
also apparently like even independent ball is now kind of becoming like college plus because now
Hmm.
they're signing a lot more guys out of indie ball who they were tracking in college but didn't want to spend either any of the 20 round picks on them, so they just wait a year, they develop an indie ball, then they sign on. Twins actually have two, like McCusker, who we saw in the majors, and then there's another guy named Peyton Eels, who is the opposite of McCusker, who's like literally like 5'3" Jose Altuve type build.
Hmm.
And I desperately want them to bat back to back in a Twins lineup one day, but we'll see if that happens.
Yeah,
I
for me, it's almost like I think understanding theoretical physics is probably easier than understanding the MLB draft. It's like it's changed so many times over the
Right,
years, and it's like, yeah.
right.
I do
Anyway,
think you're onto something, Eric. Though, just I think, especially with tech now, even if you don't draft a guy, you can like keep an eye on him in the Frontier League or whatever,
mhm.
and because I don't know how built out the tech is in those ballparks these days, but I imagine they have something where they can kind of track
I mean, if they don't have TrackMan
performance.
in most of those, I'd be
I would
shocked.
think,
Or
yeah.
because I don't know,
Shoot, the league,
TrackMan itself is like 10 years old. It's all that's not even
yeah,
new technology. There's probably something we're not even aware
yeah.
of that we're using.
Yeah, but and even still, like just the fact that 30 years ago those games weren't being live streamed
Right.
on
Yep.
YouTube like they are now.
Even that's a good point.
Which I love. I really wish where I live was closer to a minor league ballpark because I would go all the time. I love watching MILB TV. I like just there's just a charm to a minor league park. But closest I have are the Hartford Yard Goats, which is like an hour and a half away. So
Um,
I'll go to some of those games, but I don't know. It's Yankee Stadium is closer. But yeah. Anyway, that was a heck of a tangent, but that felt like that was good. Anyway,
it
John
did.
Kenzie Noel got sent down. I think we're in the
So all
middle of
that to say
putting.
that Noel got sent to AAA Columbus and Jonathan Rodriguez. I don't even know I mentioned the subsequent move. Jonathan Rodriguez was promoted this past week. I mentioned Rodriguez because he started the season on the ball club, and to this point also hasn't really impressed. I'm very skeptical of Rodriguez as a major leaguer, actually more so than Noel. So again, maybe that's just the mood of the conversation tonight. But um, he just really hasn't shown. He's got a great eye. He's almost passive though. In fact, I don't think it's almost. I think he is passive, and we'll kind of see. But he just feels like a quad A guy. He was killing AAA, but he was killing AAA last year too, and nothing came of it in his time in the majors last year either. So. Um, he was swinging a better bat AAA though. It was a time to maybe make the move when they had subsequent left-handed pitching that they were going to be facing for a few days. Um, One other negative dimension here: Will Brennan. Speaking of outfielders, he had full UCL repair done this past week, so we will not be seeing him for quite a while. It was odd because he got IL'd right around the time, uh, right after he got promoted, really. And I thought it was kind of weird. I thought they were maybe looking to find a spot. I think Lane Thomas got promoted at the time. No, he suffered a significant elbow injury and is going to be gone for, I believe, a year. And then I mentioned Andrew Walters on the pod a couple times recently. He had his surgery on his right lat over the course of the last week, and we will not see him for the rest of the year either. That's a kind of a bigger blow. He didn't start the year on the team, but he was a promising bullpen guy that really could have helped some of the depth, and they will not have him for the remainder of the season.
Is full UCL repair the new verbiage for a position player for Tommy John?
I believe they're one and the same.
I was about to
I
say, I
couldn't
don't.
tell
Is
you
there a
which
difference?
version of I couldn't tell you which version of Tommy John, but the way it was worded was full UCL repair, but I also saw it referred to as Tommy John surgery.
Yeah, I don't know. They'll come up with anything. Like they just want to
Yeah.
classify everything. I don't get it sometimes. I don't need to
Yeah.
either. It's not my job. His arm hurts,
um,
and it'll hurt for a real long time.
uh, some more positive news, if I may. I mentioned Bieber being shut down. Well, Eric Sobrowski is also trying to come back from Tommy John surgery, left-handed relief pitcher. He threw a scoreless inning at last check, 19 pitches. He's a reliever, so the fact he threw 19 pitches, he's close, but has not been promoted at this point, continuing his rehab. Um, and Lane Thomas activated from the IL last week. Played Monday, was his first game back, and went 1 for 3 with a stolen base. He had plantar fasciitis, which we've talked about how painful and debilitating that can be. The fact he stole a base in his first game back is a really good sign to me. The fact he felt comfortable doing that, pushing off his foot. And additionally, he was a big spark in their victory yesterday, like I said, where they scored 11 runs against Cincinnati. He led off, gave Stephen Kwan a day off, and he had 3 hits. So he has struggled all year. Perhaps he finally feels right, and more to come on that. And Will Wilson was optioned down to make the spot available for Lane Thomas. Utility infielder, had a 43 OPS plus in 24 games. Honestly, not missing much there. He was filling a role, backing everybody up, but rather have Lane on the ball club at this point. And that's, I think, all the news I have for now. Like I said, it's been a tough 10 days, but hoping that yesterday was kind of a way to get off the schneid, and we'll see how they do out west.
Well, I'll take that segue and say it's been a rough 10 days because the Twins went from having a lot of depth in their starting rotation 10 days ago to now 2/5 of their rotation is now on the IL for an extended period of time. And also, they're down 5-0 in the Astros in the third. Great. That pitching is continuing to be stellar. So Pablo Lopez got pulled in Oakland with a teres major strain. I'm probably saying that wrong. It's a moderate strain. He's out 2 to 3 months. That sucks. He was not by far their best pitcher. He's probably their most dependable pitcher, or the person that I would definitely expect to start game one of a playoff series. They have some options, but one of those options also went down with basically the same injury, but they're calling it something different. It's like not the teres major, but like the muscle next to it that strained. That's also a moderate strain, but I guess that's only gone for a month to 2 months. Zebby's looked pretty good outside of that first start. He's the control artist who can throw 98, 99. that sucks. He has a lot of upside. Kind of sucks that he's going to be gone for a lit. So that leaves the Twins starting rotation, and I'll show you I'm going to show you what their starting rotation, who they have to depend on. It doesn't look as bad as it's not the worst rotation I've ever seen. In fact, it might be a little bit even middle of the road. They have to depend on Joe Ryan, who has been great all year. That cannot slip at all, or they are screwed. After that, you're followed by 4 question marks. Paddock, who again is on the mound right now, is getting about 5 runs in 3 innings or 2 innings. Uh, he's pitched well. I want to point out his FIP is 423, which is I think over a full run. Oh, it's actually about 3/4 of a run lower than his actual ERA. Bailey Ober, I talked about him last week. Really concerned. His mechanics are still out of whack. He got lit up earlier this week. David Fest is a rookie, very promising rookie, but it's a lot of pressure to put on a guy who was just in AAA and his first start against the A's went pretty rough. How the Twins also handle rookie starting pitchers, and I'm sure other teams do this as well. If they're at all struggling in the 4th inning, they get pulled pretty quick. So the bullpen is gonna have some work to do if Festa isn't like perfect 2 times, almost perfect through the lineup 2 times through, because they barely let them touch. They might not even let them finish the second time through the lineup if the top of the lineup is coming in and it's a clean inning. But he has looked good outside of that one start. And then Simeon Wood Richardson is back. And he also got lit up in his last start against Texas, who Texas going into the game against the Twins, or in the series against the Twins, were literally the lowest scoring offense in the league. And they put up a 14 spot and a 16 spot. So Texas looks great against the Twins. Other than Joe Ryan, their FIP collectively isn't great. The next best is Chris Paddock with 423, and then you have Festa 462, Ober 480, and then Woods Richardson 504.
Mm-hmm.
That's the rotation. Is it the worst? No. It's going to probably have a busy bullpen, though, for the next 2 months, waiting for Zebby and Pablo to come back. And that's assuming someone else doesn't either struggle, I don't know, like Chris Paddock right now, or gets injured like Bailey Ober, who I'm just expecting any day now to go on the IL, even though they claim it's mechanics and not injury. We'll see. On the hitting side, Cody Clemens is turned back into Cody Clemens. He's last 15, he slashed 119, 245, 262. I don't know what else you could have expected from Cody Clemens. He wasn't going to be a 1,000 OPS guy for any longer. He's a quad A guy. He had a nice run. He's back to where he is. Anything bonus they can get out of him is great. But he's starting at second base an awful lot now, like a depressing a lot right now. But we'll see. But it's not all bad. Byron Buxton has looked really good after coming out of the concussion. And then Willie Castro has caught fire in his last 15 games. He's batting 385 and slugging 692. They need all the offense they can get, especially if their pitching staff is going to be a little shaky. The offense now has to pick up some weight, and I don't know if they can or not. The offense has not been consistent at all this year, and I don't know if this will be a real test over the next month for the Twins, and I could also see them kind of going the way of the Royals, which I guess is my lame-ass way of segueing to Sam. Does that work?
Yeah, that works. I can take that. The Royals news as of late has been pretty bleak. Not great results on the field. Earlier this week, Cole Reagans was put on the injured list again for the second time this season. His injury-plagued 2025 continues. He just got off the injured list. I think he only made like 1 or 2 starts after coming off the injured list. The first time, which was for a lower body injury, and now this is a rotator cuff injury. So it is not looking too good
No.
for Cole Reagan's as far as this season is concerned. He's had some little kind of nagging injuries here and there prior to this that would maybe have him miss like a start and avoid going on the injured list. But it seems like that injury history is kind of catching up to him a little bit this year. So hopefully he's able to. I mean, again, it's he's uh, when you have multiple appearances on the injured list in a single season, it's probably not. It's probably going to be a lost season.
Right.
Um, but
Especially with
uh,
rotator cuff being one of those injuries.
yeah,
That's rough.
yeah. Yeah, and especially because all of his injuries, especially like the little nagging injuries that he's had prior to this, all those injuries were, I think, lower body injuries. This is his first arm injury that I'm aware of. So I think that, like I said, it's probably looking like it's going to be a lost season for Cole, which is a shame because he's, I think, one of the better pitchers out there right now. Um, that
Did
being
they,
said,
maybe I missed it. Did they give a timeline on him? Or no? Not yet.
15-day injured list that was
Okay.
retroactive to June 8th. So we're almost through, a week of that at this point.
Right. But no hint of
Um,
it's probably not a minimum stay if rotator cuff is part of that.
I don't know. It says left rotator cuff strain.
Mm,
So, who knows?
right.
They can put whatever they want on the injury report. So,
Right.
um, who knows? So anyway, that's not great. But pitching depth has looked pretty good this season. Uh, you still got Noah Cameron bouncing around the
Yep.
team. He's looked really good.
The pride
You
of
still
Missouri.
have Mike Pride of St. Joe, Missouri. You still have Michael Lorenzen, who's had a couple shaky starts, but all in all, has looked okay. And I think for the most part, he is he is going to be, their depth will hold out. So, but speaking of depth, the Royals did actually get Lucas Urseg back
Oh,
from the injured list. So their bullpen is 2/3 back to full strength because we're still waiting on Hunter Harvey, who also 2 months ago had a right teres strain. So that is he'll hopefully be coming back within the next few days here. He was moved from the 15-day injured list to the 60-day injured list, which is just a procedural thing because he had been on the injured list for 60 days. Um, so they've got that. Hopefully we'll be back at some point soon. And Michael Massey, who has been the bane of many a Royals fan's existence, was put on the 10-day injured list on June 8th with a ankle injury, I think. Um, so yeah, those aren't great. That's a
no.
lot of blue on that Savant
Yes,
page.
it is.
So yeah, I'd like to think that maybe his injury is why he was one of the worst hitters through 60 games this year, but I don't think that's the case. I think he's just, and he wasn't the worst his first two seasons in the bigs, but this year it's just been
Well,
it's
not for
been a
nothing.
real struggle. Been a real struggle for the old Michael Massey. So. That was we'll see if that's a real injury or if that's a let's have some time off type of injury. So anyway,
I do
but
like
then of
how
course,
I do like how remarkably consistent his WOBA has been, expected WOBA has been over the last
hmm
100. It's basically a
yeah,
straight line.
yeah, it's basically a straight line that's
And not where you
very,
want it to be.
but not where you want it to be precisely. Um, but yeah, no, we'll see if he can be anything other than what he's been this year, which is bad. But the biggest and most important piece of news that I haven't been on this podcast yet to discuss would be, of course, the calling up of Jack Caglione, who does not have any real numbers on Savant yet,
Eh,
but he's come up and he's been kind of up and down, as much up and down as you can be in 6 or 7 games. He has had a couple of balls that were hit about as hard as you can hit a ball, where he was robbed of a hit. He's had a couple balls where probably should have been hits if anyone other than Nolan Arenado was playing defense. And so I think that he's looked pretty good. I think the only knock that I've seen so far against him is that he's not seeing a lot of pitches. He's
Mm,
doing a lot of swinging early in the count. And I think the one time that he did, at
yeah.
least so far that I've seen, get deep into the count was last night against the Yankees, where he was the last batter of the game, 3-2 count, 2 outs, and tried to swing, stop swinging, and then swing again at a ball
mm,
down the middle.
Oh,
Um, so it's one of those things where he has looked good, but situations like that make me wonder whether or not he's ready for the big leagues.
right. He is
Because I
23.
remember last year Jackson Holiday came up and there was a he got sent back down because he came up to the plate, bases loaded, 2 outs, full count, watched a fastball go down the middle.
Hmm.
And so those are the type of things that happen when maybe you're not ready,
Sure.
but we'll
you're
see.
you're up there guessing, is what you're doing.
Right.
You know.
Well, like not for that. We just said Noel was young for the majors. Caglione is 22. He's
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
well above schedule.
exactly. So, and he was called up within a year too.
Oh, really? Was he
So
last year's pick? He
yeah,
was.
he
Yeah.
was last
Wow.
year's pick.
Did
Yeah,
did
so
he
he was
play
called
at
up.
all, like at the complex last year or anything, or was his first pro game this year? Do you know?
No, he played last year
Hmm.
Okay.
at the complex league. I think he might have even made it to single A last year.
Right.
Okay.
So
Gotcha.
he was started the year in double A and then was at triple A for like what was it, 2 weeks, three
Yeah.
weeks before he ended up getting called up. So he definitely played pro ball last year at some point. But yeah, then let's see who else. I think that's about it as far as news is concerned.
Yeah.
A lot of other little kind of smaller transactions and corresponding moves and things of that nature. So, um,
So, this is maybe a higher level. This is maybe like a big picture question that probably this isn't the perfect time to ask this, but if you would have asked a young Sam in 2023, we don't know about 2024 breaking out yet, that the Royals are playing how they are right now, would you still say they were on track for their rebuild, or would you say that they're behind?
I would say that they were on track,
So,
and I think last year was the year. I think they made such a leap last year,
right,
improving their record by 30 games, making the playoffs. Like I think this should have been the year where they were competing for the playoffs.
sure,
Last year should have been the year where they win like they won, somewhere between 75 and
yeah,
81 games, And I would absolutely say that if they hadn't made the playoffs last year, they'd be exactly where they need to be this year. But the problem is everything exists within context, and everything exists in the in the fact that you did make that leap last year and you did make the playoffs last year, and that there are going to be expectations to
Yeah.
build on that.
Right.
And not
And
to
the
bring
fact
this up
that,
again, but also you had a very similar record to a team in your division that is now 8 games in front of everybody else. And so
Yeah.
it's not
exactly.
only do things exist within context, but comparison is a human trait. And so
Hmm.
to see that team do what it's done, and I won't even speak for the Royals, but our team see what they're doing, or see what our teams are doing, and so it all happens
And
Right.
I
in
think the
totality.
Tigers have been I think the Tigers have been moving up a little bit more steadily
Sure.
than the Royals have been. And I think that they are kind of, they've been taking like that one little step at a time. Whereas the Royals went from, if the Tigers are moving up at a 45-degree angle, the Royals went from, it's just like,
Yeah.
and then maybe you go down a little bit before,
That's fair.
whatever. But I think I think that, and I don't know what the Tigers record, what their improvement year by year was, but
I mean, I think I just saw they have
it's
in
a
the
fair
last
point.
100. I thought just saw. I mean, I can't remember where I saw this, so take it with a pinch of salt. But in the last 100 games, it's the Dodgers and Tigers have the best record in baseball. The last 100 games, going back to last year.
Remember, they
Mm,
got hot in
mm,
August or whatever it was. And
Yeah.
they haven't stopped since, other than
No.
5 games
yeah,
against Cleveland.
And like the scary thing about them, they're doing this with no superstars in that lineup. I know Riley Green is
Yeah,
very good. I know like they have like Kerry Carpenter is very good, but like they don't have an 8 player. They have a bunch of 6s and 7s all the time, and then they just have really good pitching with the best pitcher in the world right now.
and like Lee talks about, they mix
yeah,
and match. They play their whole line. They play everybody. They have versatility.
Yep.
It's all 13 position players
Yes.
plus the
Yep.
pitching.
yeah. So the Tigers, since the COVID season, 77 wins,
Yep.
66 wins, 78 wins,
Yeah.
86
Now on
wins.
pace for
And then this year they're on pace for, whatever
over a
they're on
hundred.
pace
I
for.
think last I saw it
Um,
was like 108 or something like
yeah,
that.
Is it that many?
yeah,
Yeah.
I would say they're probably on pace for over 100. But still, that would be an improvement of
Yeah.
14 games if they won 100 games. The Tigers have been making smaller steps, but, again, the Royals improved by 30
Right.
wins last year. And sure, that was great and that was a lot of fun and that was beyond my expectations, but there might be um the bill might be
Hmm.
coming due for that. And I think a small step back would be, maybe they go, you know, maybe this year they go 81 and 81 and miss out
Right.
on the playoffs. Like I would take I think that would, I wouldn't cry foul
So,
about that. What I would cry foul about is if it's just a complete collapse, and they end up winning, they end up losing 90 games this year. That would be, which is, that could very
Right.
well happen. There's a lot of games left in a positive way, and there's a lot of games left in a negative way. So again, we'll see. But I'm kind of, I think for me, I'm in cross my
Hmm.
fingers mode.
I think
something
just
I
go
something
ahead.
I said when we were doing our season previews was we were talking about the White Sox. I had mentioned we all think the White Sox are going to win more games this year, right? And everybody was like, "Yeah, right." And by the way, they are. It looks like they're going to.
Yeah.
Well, those wins have to come from somewhere.
Right.
And who do they play most
Yeah.
often?
Yep.
You
I
know,
was.
Well, they might have more wins by the All-Star break than they
Yeah.
did
maybe.
last year.
I just want Colorado to go on a hot streak. I just don't take that from the White Sox 1 year after. I love that they were the worst team in baseball. Whatever, stupid Rob Manafort, whatever his stupid name is. But
Man.
um, is it Monfort? No.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
Monfort.
yeah, yeah.
Manfred.
I tried to say a guy tried calling him Manfred, didn't I? Sorry, Ronnie.
That's what I thought you were. That's what I thought you were doing. That's why I started chuckling.
Oh no, I'm not that clever. I was thinking about. I mean, granted, the Twins I see are in a spiral. Oh, by the way, Paddock has now given up 8 runs in 3 innings, uh, and I don't think I'm going to be watching this game for too much longer because I'm getting real sad.
Is
But
there
just
another guy in the? Is there another guy on the farm to replace him?
not anymore. They just miss.
They've come up, right? It was Zebby and it was
Now
Simeon
you
Woods
have
Richardson,
like
right?
I think now you have just like typical depth for like an average team. They have like a couple decent prospects, but no one that you're expecting to be a long-term solution. They could surprise
Yeah,
you and be fine, but they're out of proven high upside, well not even proven, but high upside options. Yes, they're pretty much done.
gotcha.
But we'll see. I was thinking about this, and again, this is all in the context of the Twins have not looked good, especially pitching, and the pitching has held them up this entire year. So to see them struggle as bad as they are is real. There's a lot of red flags going off in my head. But the Twins have really been competitive since 2017, which is 8 years ago, which for a small market, mid market team, that's a pretty good run. Like every year since then, they've at least been trying to compete or have been competing. They haven't gotten into a season not thinking they could win the division in that year. And I'm looking at the lineup, and I'm looking at like a 32-year-old Buxton who's great, a 30-year-old Correa who is struggling, but like he's getting better. I don't think he's a complete albatross. Still great in the field, and they have good starting pitching. But I'm just wondering there's no one for Buxton and Correa to hand the baton to outside of Matt Wallner. Because like Royce Lewis, I mean, if Royce Lewis truly is not good, if he's just average, they had a really promising crop of prospects 4 or 5 years ago. Kirilloff was supposed to be a 300 type hitter.
Hmm.
Larnick, who's been fine, like decent. Wallner's been a surprise, but then you have Miranda and Julian, who have completely crapped the bed when they got to the majors. And of those, what, 6 players, you have Wallner and Wallner, who legitimately looks really good, and then you have Larnick, who might be a decent starting left fielder for a couple of years. I don't think he's going to have a 10-year run as a starting outfielder, but whatever, he might. They need a new crop, and then like their rookies that are coming up. You have Emmanuel Rodriguez, who is a as true as a through outcomes player as Adam Dunn ever was, except for he can play pretty decent center fielder. So he could be. I think he will either be a multiple time All Star or a fourth outfielder for a decade, which is a decent floor, but that you can't depend like to hand a baton off to. You have Walker Jenkins, who's been very good, but also very injured since he's been drafted a couple years ago. I think he's a top 5 global prospect in baseball.
Hmm.
And I just kind of wonder if this competitive is much closer to shutting than staying open without ownership intervention, which anyone who has watched any of these knows that's not happening with the pull ads. Or these players need to turn it around. So I'm a little concerned about my team right now. As Chris Paddock gives up another double off the wall.
How is he still in the game?
I think he's at let's eat this. We're not winning this. He's going to eat some innings right now.
Rocco, what are you doing, man?
I mean, their bullpen's pretty gassed right now. They had a day off
Yeah.
yesterday.
Well, to that point, you 62 runs in 7 games.
7 games.
Those guys have got used, right?
Yep. So Paddock's there to eat some innings today, as he should. The SOB.
By the way, I'll just say real quick, I recognize the negative of this is the biggest of silver linings. I get that. But
Yep.
averaging giving up 9 runs a game for 7 games and you won 2 of them,
Yeah, baseball.
I mean, I imagine you would rather not give up 9 runs in 7 games, but
I
to
mean,
win two
if
of them
they
is
would
pretty
have
good.
like they it's not like they like after the winning streak they definitely have a losing record, but like they've been playing around 500 and I felt pretty good about the games up to that because they played an incredibly competitive series against Seattle where literally every game was either a walk-off or won in extras.
And Seattle's been
They
good.
Yeah, and Seattle's a good team. So like they played them really tough. They could have easily won or swept that series. They beat up on Oakland as you should because they're a AAA team, literally playing in a AAA field. And then you run into Texas, who you're thinking, okay, they've been the quietest offense in the majors, and not anymore. And now you're in Houston, and who's been the bugaboo for the Twins for the last like 5 years. But we'll see. I don't know. Um, yeah, I'm not ready to hit the panic button yet, but I'm thinking about it. Like, I definitely see the button in the corner of the desk. But we can go over it quickly. We did have one series recap since the last time we recorded. I don't know how much Sam is going to want to talk about it, so I'll just show it up. The White Sox took 2 out of 3 from Kansas City. Sam, what do
Mhm.
you remember?
Um, I'll be quick about this. I'll be honest. I was at a bachelor party this weekend. So while I did catch a little bit of some of the games, I was not plugged in to the Royals games this weekend. Um, First game, we were at a playing golf at a golf simulator and had the game on in the background, and you're right there, it's 2-2. You're hanging around, and then the White Sox score 5 runs
Yep.
in the bottom of the eighth to just basically snatch the game away, and it was over from there. So the Royals have had a good bullpen this year, did not have a good bullpen, and the White Sox just basically completely tore the game away from them. Second game, I didn't watch. I don't think I saw any of it at all. But I know that, again, as you can see, the Royals mustered 1 run on
Hmm.
8 hits, and the White Sox scored some runs early, and that was basically it. I think I saw a stat today that the Royals are like 3 for their last 30 with runners in scoring position. Not gonna do it. Not gonna win games with numbers like that. And then the final game of the series, well, great. You win the game. You salvage something from this series in the final game of the series. Well, the Royals were up 7-2 going into the ninth inning, and they brought in some guy who I've never heard of, who was signed like 2 days ago, or was signed like 2 days before this game, got cut like 2 days after the game. He comes in, bases loaded, no outs, and the White Sox, if it hadn't been for an amazing play by Bobby Witt Jr. on a diving line drive catch, you probably end up losing that game. Estevez did eventually get out of it and get the save, but look, you're not feeling good about what you did in the last inning of the game because you had the game, and then you start giving it away, and by all accounts they probably should have ended up losing the game. So it was just a very frustrating series, and if it had been against just some random team, like,
Right.
whatever, who cares? But the fact that it was against the White Sox is, a pretty bitter pill to
Right.
swallow. And look, they're MLB players. They're getting
Right.
paid too. They're, pros with bats in their
And not for
hands.
nothing.
So
They're not
it's
lifeless anymore. Like last year, they were lifeless. It was a veteran
no,
team
they're
that
not.
collapsed. Now they have young players who are actually trying to prove something. Like they're not a complete disaster.
I mean, I think they're still a complete disaster. They're just not the most complete disaster of all time
anymore. Yeah, which I guess that was last year.
anymore, which they very well the Rockies could
God, I
snatch
hope
that away
not.
from them at any
I
point this
genuinely
year.
hope not.
But
But no,
yeah,
I think I said it last
yeah.
week too, but I want the
Uh,
White Sox to be good just so they can lose in spectacular fashion with expectations again because I loved it. I loved the collapse of the Eloys and the Yoan Moncadas and all of them just not living up to potential. I want them to succeed outside of
yeah.
Chicago, don't get me wrong, but in Chicago,
Yeah, that whole crop of young White Sox players
just
just
didn't.
never worked
Which is
out.
weird because
So
like they were looking like monsters in 2021, and then just yeah, I don't know if Andrew Benintendi just decided to poison the locker room or what he wanted to do, but every one of them flopped. And then you have Robert,
yeah.
who I
So
think is kind of like Jokic, who it's not even clear he likes playing baseball. Like if you watch them play, like they both look miserable playing. But I don't know.
I think Rendon would be a better comp for that. I think Jokic likes playing basketball. I just don't think Jokic likes everything else that comes along with
Running,
being an
right?
NBA player, like having to
I've been
talk.
trying to get into the NBA more because like I want like I've been watching pretty much just baseball for the last like decade or so, which is fine. I love it. I'm gonna continue doing it, but at least like something else to watch. And the only thing I just watching Jokic, what like lifting the NBA Finals trophy, and he was just like, this is
Hmm
fine. I guess this is what I wanted to do. Cool. Can I go home now?"
hmm
Which I think he actually said. I think he was just gonna go home and like farm or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, he's got
That's what
horses.
it was. But
Yeah.
yeah, looks like Sam dropped off, or not Sam. Dan dropped off for a second. I'm assuming he's coming back on, or we depressed him enough that he won't be. But
Yeah, we'll see.
we
We'll
did.
see. Um, I don't have really anything else to talk about as far as recaps or Royals if you want to dive into our secondary topics.
Yeah, we may as well. I don't think it's much of a. I think this is just continuing the therapy session.
This will be a yeah,
Yeah.
this will be a quick
The reason we
thing.
wanted to, so like we've been the the social media fan communities. We're part of them. We love them, but not all the time. They can be a little bit draining. I know the uh, twin social media or Twitter can be real toxic. Maybe that's just Twitter. Maybe that's just social media. But I'd be kind of interested to see what the other annoyances, if we all have like the same annoyances with our fan bases as the other teams in the division do, or if it's all kind of the same. So I guess like just to kind of set it up too, like the Twins fans have this weird, like they're a football town, and I think like every team in baseball, like every town in the division is a football town. That's definitely true for Kansas City. I think Cleveland might be a baseball town. I think that's fair to say. I don't think like Dan was gonna know that much better than I, but I get the sense that Detroit is more basketball, but I don't know that. But yeah, football, the Vikings and the way they lose in spectacular fashion, it seemed like every year. They take a lot into baseball, like quick takes, hot takes, things like that. Oh, Dan lost power, so we'll see if he can actually come
Hmm
back on. Okay. Did he put that in the Discord?
He messaged in the Discord. Yeah.
Okay, well,
Yeah,
hopefully
we'll
that
keep
goes
this
back.
going and if he doesn't show up, we'll just,
If not, we'll just insert his opinions here because he's
yeah.
really like the spark of this topic. But like, I've seen so many football hot takes in Twins community, like in the Twins Reddit, that it disgusts me. They're not the same sports, and I understand that the Vikings will have a crushing loss, but that doesn't mean because the Twins went 0-4 last week doesn't mean that they need to cut everyone and fire everyone. Like it just the quick takes. Baseball is not that type of sport. And I don't know. And then like the also other thing that kind of like drives me nuts about Twins fandom, if you are a superstar that makes any amount of money, and I mean not even like Joe Mauer is an example. Joe Mauer had a big contract for when he signed it, but by the end of his life, at the end of his career, it really wasn't that bad. It was like an 8 year, 180 something million. He was getting paid like 25 million dollars a year, which was not that bad at 2017. Yes, his production came out, but considering he was a literal Hall of Famer when he signed that contract, or an eventual Hall of Famer when he signed that contract, it turned out pretty good. And if you ask, I think half of the Twins fandom, they think that Joe Mauer was the worst thing to ever happen to Minnesota. And it just, I don't get it. There's like this eat their own mentality type thing. Same thing with Buxton. Buxton's getting paid $15 million a year, and people still be like, ooh, he has the big contract and he's hurt all the time. Like, what an absolute, like, terrible person. Correa's going down that. He hasn't quite hit that backlash yet, but I think he's catching up there pretty quick. But be curious to see what the Royals, if the Royals fandom does the same to you.
Well, Correa's disliked for other reasons, Eric.
Well, this
So,
is true,
you
but
can rest easy on that one. I've got a couple. I think your comment about the Kansas City being a football town is not incorrect. I really think Kansas City is and every town is this a who's good right now town. So obviously right now the Chiefs are good. So that's where we're at. But 10 years ago, it was very much a baseball town. And maybe sometimes when Sporting KC is doing well or when the World Cup's going to be in town next year, I think there's going to be a lot of soccer related hype in Kansas City. I think the biggest thing that I wish people would kind of change their tune on is a lot of people and feel like a lot of people equate what's going on now with the Royals to what was going on when David Glass was the owner of the Royals. And I think people don't understand that this is a new regime. And we're always talking about how cheap the owner is and how unwilling they are to make moves. But I don't think David Glass has been cheap in his tenure as the Royals owner because he paid everyone during the pandemic. He paid to get rid of Mike Matheny. He paid to get rid of Hunter Dozier. He paid to get rid of Hunter Renfro. He has shown that he has some stones and some willingness to put the chips in the center of the table. So I think that frustrates me a lot when people don't see that and when people just think, like, granted, the Glass family owned the team for 20 some odd years. So
right,
it's, fair to think that. But I really do think this is a different regime of the Royals. And I think that a lot of people who I see online aren't necessarily understanding that. So I think that's number one. And I would say number two, and this is just like, I don't even want to get into this, just stadium drama, stadium
sure,
hot takes, stadium, related uh, stuff like, oh, I heard from so and so who knows so and so whose cousin works for Jackson County that the stadium blah 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 blah, or
right,
it's like just the adult version of my uncle works at Nintendo, you
right.
know and I just it just frustrates me so much where we have these amateur Sherlock Holmes trying to figure out and then argue about the taxpayers and the money that we're giving them to build the stadium.
Yep,
And it's just like the stadium thing is going to go how it's going to go, and outside of whatever ballot uh, initiative that we're going to vote on, that's the only say that you're going to get into it.
right,
So they're going to go, and right now the special session is still going on, or at least I think it's still going on. The special session still going on, and we've got Missouri legislators acting like idiots in the special session. And it's just I don't like all this stuff is putting a very sour taste in my
Right.
mouth. So
I just want to go back to the spending part in a bit because I feel like I've definitely got on some rants about the twin spending. I've never like I think where I don't want to like I don't want to sound like I'm talking out of two sides of my mouth. I don't expect the Twins to have a $200 million payroll. It would be great. There's nothing stopping them from doing it, but they're like 15th in market size in the United States. If they're around that in payroll, I'm fine with that. My biggest issue was them cutting 30 million out of the payroll when they just won their first playoff series in 20 years. And they have 130 I think it's like $142 million payroll now, which is if they would have continued that trend, they'd probably be at the 180 mark, 175, 180 mark. And I think, and like going into this year, this offseason, unless they get a new owner and that's kicking the can down the road, they're probably going to have a roster payroll crunch, which is really disappointing because they really don't have that many bad contracts. Because what the nice thing about Correa's contract is now he makes like 37 million next year, and then it goes down to like 30 million for the last 3 years. Like it actually goes down, which is nice.
that's very unusual.
Yeah, I mean the whole his whole saga of becoming a free agent was I
Well,
mean
yeah,
that
yeah,
whole
that's
thing.
true. That's true.
I mean,
He
and as
had a
soon as
very awkward he had a very awkward free
yeah,
agency.
and then it. I mean, yes, he. I'm gonna sound like a complete like fanboy of him because yes, I did hate Carlos Correa up until the moment he signed with the Twins, and then I turned into a hypocrite. But like when he signed with San Francisco, and then he got medical flag for his ankle, and then the same thing with the Mets, and he got like 385 million and 350 million. As soon as that deal with the Mets looked like it was going to turn sour, he then did kind of choose the Twins, which I understand they were the third, by far the third choice. But
Hmm.
they signed him to a 6 year, $200 million contract. He would have gotten more than that should he have chose to stay on the open market. He did just say, "Let's just go back to Minnesota." I'm not telling you that he didn't reject them twice. Like I'm not an idiot here, but he could have gotten a higher contract if he was purely just chasing the money after he got rejected for the actual big money. But
Yeah, and I also think this was kind of an awkward off season for the Royals as well. They tried to make a number of moves which didn't end up working out. And I think part of it also is um, a lot of the guys who were available this free agency have not panned out. Like Santander was one of the bigger
right,
names. He's had he's like one of the worst OPS in the league right now. He's been terrible. Profar was another big name. He got slapped for PEDs. He got suspended for 80
right,
games. You know, there are other guys who were Taylor Ward is someone who the Royals tried to go after, who's been, I think, okay this year. Last time I checked, he was having an okay year, but still, he's not lighting the world on fire. So, um, it's just it's the crapshoot of sports and the
right.
crapshoot of look, you're gonna have free agents aren't cheap.
No.
They never are, and
Well, and by default,
you're
with a free agent, you are the one who's going to make the worst deal
mhm,
just by winning because nobody else values that player as much as you are valuing them.
yeah, yeah, but and it's like you when you sign a free agent, sure, you might roll a seven,
Yeah,
but you might also roll snake eyes.
right.
So, and it just you never know. You never know. So,
No, and
I
like
think
that's where
it's a difficult it's a strange business,
right.
professional sports.
Well, like when you're signing someone for 5 years, you don't know anything about what they're going to do in 5 years. You're just hoping the first
Mhm.
half of that is a good contract and it's not just a
Yeah.
complete albatross. What's weird is what Javi Baez is doing now, who is almost doing the reverse. Do I believe
Hmm.
Javier Baez is suddenly good again? No, I really don't, but he's still proving me wrong every day this year. So we'll see how that ends up. But I feel like the difference between what the Twins are doing and like what Kansas City and what Detroit is trying to do is there's no talk of Minnesota signing anyone. In fact, they're going to have to trade away good players just so that they don't hit their third year of arbitration. The Royals are trying to spend. Detroit is trying to spend. Cleveland should be spending more. And honestly, the worst thing that could happen to the AL Central is Cleveland with an extra $50 million in payroll, because that would be horrifyingly scary.
Hmm.
And then even the White Sox, they just have a transition. They just came up with a transition deal for Justin Ishbia, who people remember was going to buy the Twins a couple of years ago, until the White Sox said, actually, would you mind buying us at one point?
Did, did that go through, by the way? Was that signed on the dotted line?
For the Twins? No.
No, I mean the Ishbia buying the White
Yes,
Sox. Did
that
that
is an
get
official
signed
thing.
on the? Okay,
So
that got signed on the. Okay.
it's a weird thing because like nothing happens for the next 5 years other than Ishbia is gonna like slowly buy up like a portion of the team. So
Hmm.
the White Sox are gonna have more money in theory. The reality is probably just gonna go to Reinsdorf, and
Hmm.
then from 2029 to 2034. Reinsdorf has the option to hand the team over to Ishbia at any time. At 2034, Ishbia can say it's mine now.
Hmm.
So he will
Yeah.
spend money, which is again like I like having a good White Sox team so that they can suck eventually, but he will spend like Steve Cohen, and if not Steve Cohen,
Yeah.
he'll spend like the Yankees. Like,
Yeah. That's interesting that he's just buying shares slowly
yeah,
until he. Yeah. That's.
I mean, it had to have. I mean, if he wanted to own a major league team, he would have bought the Twins 2 months ago. It was
Hmm.
that deep. And then he just wanted the White. He lives in Chicago now. I think he grew up actually a Tigers fan. But if you're asking me who has the potential to make more money, the team in Chicago or the team in Minnesota, and the Minnesota
Good point.
has a good baseball field already. Chicago is looking to upgrade their field. You're going to make so
Yeah.
much more money in Chicago. Like I don't blame him for doing it,
Yeah.
but it's
Well,
still
that depends if that bill that the Illinois legislature about they have to win 3 out of the past 5 seasons to get state
oh
money. Did
yeah,
you see that?
I
It's
did.
called
Yeah, that was funny.
The Bears Act. That was funny, but
But
yeah.
whatever, they'll pass it because what did Oren say? They actually like the last time they got a new stadium built, they actually like turned the clocks back a half hour so they could meet the deadline,
Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
which is a cute story. But I'd love to tell you
That
that.
is. That is. Yeah.
I wish
If
that
that's
was
not if that weren't indicative of how our government works, that would be a lot
yeah. If
more
that was
fun
the worst
of a
scandal,
story. Yeah.
oh god, if only.
It's how government works, kids.
Hmm. Yeah,
But
well, that's assuming the government works now. Anyway, yeah, I don't have anything else on that. I don't think Dan's going to get his power back.
I
So
don't have anything else. I don't think Dan's going to be back because usually power doesn't come back on in
right.
20 minutes. So, yeah, I'm good wrapping it up if you are.
Yeah, I think so too. So I'll go over the schedules real quickly. There really isn't none of the central teams play each other in the next week. So like I said, I'll just go over it very quickly. Detroit is playing Cincinnati, then against the Pirates, the Rays, and then go up to the Athletics next Tuesday. The the Twins are playing the Astros. I don't want to talk about it right now. Then they
Mm,
go to the Reds, the Brewers, and then back to the Mariners. The Guardians, Mariners, Giants, Athletics. Ooh, that's a lot of late games. I hate that schedule.
mm-hmm.
Kansas City playing the Athletics, going to Texas, going to San Diego, and then finishing up with Tampa, and then the White Sox at the Rangers, playing Kansas City, and then the Blue Jays, and that'll be it for the next time until we record next time. So, unless you have any closing thoughts, I think we can put a bow on this very depressing therapeutic rant.
Yeah. Well, hey, you know what? If it's gonna go south, then That's what's going to happen. So.
It was so depressing. Dan's power killed itself.
Yeah.
Nothing problematic about that phrasing. All right. See you guys later.